What's up, everyone? Zach Reger with SBD here previewing an amazing Final Four matchup. We have Florida, we have Auburn, numbers 3 and 4 in Ken Palm. And for just the fifth time in history, we have two SEC teams playing in the Final Four in the same year. And this will be the first time that both SEC teams are playing each other in the Final Four. And so I had to bring in some SEC experts here. Connor O'Gara, Brett Friedlander from Saturday Down South. Guys, how are you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Good to be here, man. It's going to be an
Having
awesome
a good
Final Four.
time. Yep.
Yeah, so let's just get into the betting line here. This game starts 6:09 Eastern Time. Florida -2.5, over under 159.5. Auburn plus 130 on the money line. I'm having a tough time with this one. These two teams are very evenly matched. That's why I brought you guys here as well. Help persuade me. I've been back and forth. I think I have my answer, but let's see.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that Bruce Pearl can sell to his team, you guys were the underdogs, because they're the number one overall seed, yet they're the team that comes into this Final Four as the team with the longest odds to cut down the nets. I think it was plus 500 last that I checked, even lower than Houston, which is kind of crazy to think about. But Auburn is potentially going to benefit from the fact that it already saw what didn't work against Florida. That regular season game in February might be the only game that you can point to on Auburn's schedule and not dismiss it, because Florida came out of the gates and really struggled. And Florida was down, I think, 9 in that game without Elijah Martin, by the way, who
It
will
was
be back.
15-5 within the first 5 minutes.
And then went on this run where all of a sudden you look up and you're like, they're up 21 in Neville. That's a hard thing to do in the jungle. And at the rate that Auburn was winning these games at, that just seemed like, oh my gosh, like, who is this Florida team? That was kind of their coming out party in a lot of different ways. But Bruce Pearl can legitimately sell to his team, you guys are the underdogs. He's definitely looked at what the lines are in Vegas, and he's preaching that to his team. I don't blame him for doing it. And I wonder if that's going to shape the perception that Auburn comes out with.
They do have the revenge factor. They lost in that game, so they're underdogs. They lost. Everyone's counting you out.
I think the biggest variable here, though, is the health of Johnny Broom. And today, on Thursday after practice, he returned to practice and he declared himself 100%. But we're not going to know until he gets out there, because when he came back into the game on Saturday against Michigan State, you could tell he was playing with one arm.
Yeah.
So if he's even close to full capacity, that's a game changer. If he's not, Auburn's in a whole heap of trouble, I think. The other thing, too, here is that Florida, as dominant as they've been all season, the last couple of games, they've been playing with their food, and they've gotten very, very lucky that, they were able to come from behind against UConn in the second round, and even luckier that, they were 10 points down with 5.5 minutes to go against Texas Tech. And Walter Clayton Jr. has bailed them out twice. And I don't know how many times you can keep going to that well. So getting off to a really good start, I think, is important for Florida.
Real quick to circle back on your point with Broom, I think it might be easy to, and I'm struggling with this all week, it might be easy to dismiss the impact of that very awkward fall that he suffered middle of the second half of that game against Michigan State, because of how he came out to this Willis Reed-like reception there at Auburn East, and he drains that three. And that will go down as one of the best moments in Auburn basketball history. But it'll be very interesting to kind of see the way that line moves, coming off of him saying he's 100%, he's ready to go, no limitations in practice. They're going to do whatever they can to protect that right elbow. That's what I think is going to be most pivotal. Now, he's a lefty, obviously. He's still got the full array of post moves. So if you're looking at some of those props going, man, I should just hit the under on everything, I don't know how limited he's going to be, and I don't even think he really knows how limited he's going to be until he gets out there. It could be one of those live odds situations you're looking at with him, where if you see him get a few of those first buckets going, and he's working the post, and he's bodying up like Chenyolu or Thomas Houck or some of these guys, and looks good from the jump, then maybe that might be the time. But it's going to be awfully difficult to predict how he's going to look and if he's going to look like his National Player of the Year self.
I don't think the biggest difference is going to be offensively. I think the question is going to be how he defends.
Sure.
And I guarantee you, one of those big guys for Florida, the first couple of chances they get, they're going to take him to his right to see how that arm works. And if they can get to the rim, as easily as they think they might be able to against him. And if he could defend, great. If he can't, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, Dylan Cardwell likes to do the dirty work for that team. I mean, he's the bruiser. He's the guy on the low block that he's kind of become the enforcer for that team, and he's going to have a lot
built
of the
like
help
an edge
side.
rusher. Yeah.
Dude, in a past life, that guy was definitely an edge rusher. I'm sure Hugh Freeze at some point last year was like, "Hey, you think about football? Like, just give him a call, see if it works out." But it's going to be a fascinating matchup, and Broom's health is definitely going to be a big part of it.
With that, the way I see it, I think you touched on the scoring aspect of it, how we'll see just how healthy he is. I see the rebounding really being the issue there, especially against Florida, who is so good at rebounding one, and then especially offensive rebounds. Which even looking back at their first matchup here in the regular season, Auburn actually had more offensive rebounds, which was kind of crazy, but they ended 40 rebounds apiece because it was 29-11 on defensive rebounds because Auburn shot so poorly in that game. And so I could see Hawk Condon, who's dealing with some of his own injuries as well. If Broom is not himself on the glass getting those rebounds, it could be tough in the interior.
Absolutely, Zach. And you know what? If you look at the two games in the tournament that Florida had the most trouble with, the UConn and the Texas Tech game, Texas Tech had 14 offensive rebounds, UConn had 12. And so they gave them trouble on the offensive boards with a healthy Broom. So that could definitely be an issue.
Yeah, Florida's one of those teams that you could watch them for the first 20 minutes of a game and go, this is what everybody's been hyping up. This is the hottest team in college basketball. This is the team that got the 1 seed. And sooner or later in a game, they settle in. They figure out the sloppy turnovers of what's plaguing them. They get after it on the glass. They have a few of these possessions with Walter Clayton Jr. where either it's a big shot from deep or a drive where he just attacks the basket and is able to get to the rim. I've been comparing him to Trey Burke throughout this entire NCAA tournament. And I just feel like Florida settles in a way that elite teams, we kind of question, how is that moment going to be? It's the big question with Duke going into this weekend of what's it going to look like if you're kind of back against the wall and it's 4 or 5 point game, you're down late, and you got to turn for these big time buckets. And Florida has the benefit of being in that spot. Now you could play the other side and say, well, sooner or later, a team like Auburn might be the team that can fend them off. And that's kind of where I think this game is heading. And I guess I won't tip my pick just yet. But I do think that Auburn has shown to be a team that can play with a lead and secure it, despite the fact that you could probably poke some holes in the way that their identity's been constructed. But I just think they figured out a way to kind of close these games.
And Auburn has been, like we always talk about Florida with the Texas Tech, the UConn game having to come back. Auburn, it hasn't been all easy. They had the game against Michigan where they were down 9 points in the second half, and then they won by 13. They still covered the spread, so they're able to come back. They've done it before. They're not scared of being down. So it's not just Florida who's had these. So they're also battle-tested and just so undervalued, it seems like. Like, everyone's forgotten about Auburn, which is crazy that they're the number 1 overall seed.
And, I wonder how much this factors into this. I think the master versus disciple element is a fun storyline. We in the media like to talk about that stuff. I was trying to go through it and figure out if there was an example of a master versus disciple series in a season wherein the disciple got the better of the master twice. And it's hard to find with one that ends in the NCAA tournament. Now, there are some regular season examples. Matt Painter used to do it all the time to Bruce Weber because Bruce Weber blows chunks. But there are so many different times in which you'd say, like, all right, Roy Williams, Dean Smith, Brett, like that's it, where maybe he got the better of him at one point. But I do wonder.
I don't think that happened.
Yeah, they faced each other twice in the NCAA tournament. They split it. But there are so few situations like this. And I wonder in a game like this if that's advantage Auburn, if that's advantage to the guy who that ate at Bruce Pearl. Like that ate at him for the last 2 months that he lost that game despite the fact they got the 1 seed. They won the regular season title. And if that's maybe a little bit of extra motivation for the true actual underdog in this game, which is Auburn.
And you know what else too, Connor? I think it still eats at Bruce Pearl that the foul call at the end of the Virginia game cost his team
the missed
a chance
double
of
dribble, Brett. The missed double dribble.
That too. But I mean, there were issues at the end of that game, legitimate issues that he could still run in his mind. If only we would have won a national championship. And I think that really does. You want to talk about motivation. I think that burns still in him.
All right, so let's get into our predictions, our bets. I have my side. I'm betting on the side. I'm betting on a player prop, and I'm going to save mine for after you guys, but want to hear your thoughts, your predictions. Who is going to win this game? And just a nugget even further on what I said earlier about SEC teams, multiple of them in the Final Four. In 3 of the 4 times that 2 SEC teams have made the Final Four, the SEC team went on to win it all. So it's, I mean, I guess it's a numbers game. You have two, like half the field, but still, it's fun. One of these two teams has a chance to keep that betting trend going. Who's it going to be?
I think Duke's winning a national title. And I say that as someone who picked Oregon to beat them in the Sweet 16, so foot and mouth. Take this with a grain of salt. Also predicted Auburn to lose in the Sweet 16 to Michigan, which looked good for about roughly 25 minutes of that game, and then we know how that ended. But yeah, I think that this is advantage Auburn. I'm kind of done doubting Auburn. That's what I've realized, is that I'm done doubting this team who obviously came into the NCAA tournament having lost 3 of 4 games. No team has gone on to win a national championship after losing 3 of 4 entering the NCAA tournament. Auburn is trying to become the first. And I just look at all the different ways that they've found offense, despite the fact that I don't think Johni Broom has been the best version of himself down the stretch in a lot of these games. Now, he was against Michigan State while he was in there, but the ability to get a guy like Tahad Pettiford, where if you have bet on those overs for his points throughout the NCAA tournament, you've made yourself rich, because he's averaging like 17.3 points per game in the NCAA tournament. The guy's just a walking bucket, and he's been so fun to watch with this team. And it's kind of become maybe the biggest question for Florida is not how do they defend Johni Broom, but how do they defend Tahad Pettiford getting the offense that he's been able to provide him with. So I think Auburn wins this game outright. I think Auburn wins at 73-71. It's a thrilling down to the wire game. I still think the SEC team is going to be the underdog against Duke. I think we're heading on a collision course for the rematch of Auburn and Duke, the great ACC, SEC regular season game that we got. One of 2 games that the ACC was able to win this year in that challenge. But I do think that it's heading towards that for a collision course. And I'm saying this despite the fact that I picked Florida to win it all in my original bracket.
A little hedge there. I like it.
Big time.
So I agree with a lot of the things Connor said, but I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm going to say that Florida is going to dictate the tempo of this game. They're going to play a lot faster than Auburn wants to, and I'm not sure Auburn's going to be able to stop them. And Walter Clayton Jr. just has the clutch gene, and he just seems to right now be in the mode where Florida ain't losing, and I'm not going to let it happen. And when I saw those two teams on the same court in back-to-back games in Raleigh 2 weeks ago, I was convinced that they were the 2 best teams in the country, and I still am. And so I'm picking Florida to win this game outright, maybe like 87-84. It's going to be a high-scoring game, and I do think Duke cuts down the nets on Monday. I just think that they're too talented, too versatile, too, just too everything. I mean, it's such a well-constructed team. I mean, you see that even when Cooper Flagg goes 6 of 16 from the floor against Alabama.
He and I get confused for each other all the time, so don't worry.
So you're about the same size. So.
Not the first time.
Yeah, you post up anybody today, but anyway, but he went 6 of 16 against Alabama, and they won the game by 20 points, and it wasn't a fluke. So they just have so many ways to beat you, and I think that John Shire has really grown as a coach, but. I do think it's going to be Florida, and I do think it's going to be Duke, and I think that game is going to be an absolute track meet and one of the most interesting and fun championship games we've seen in a while.
So, Zach, can I ask you this? If you were trying to parlay something for this matchup, this Auburn-Florida showdown, would you take a chance on saying, if you're of the mindset that Brett has that Florida's going to win this game, would you go with something like a wild card of Elijah Martin, who wasn't out there for that first game, do something points, rebounds, assists combined for him, and parlay it with Florida to be able to just win money line? Is that interesting enough? Or is this one of those where you have such versatile teams, and they've shown so many different sides that it's kind of hard to pinpoint that one guy. I love Thomas Houck. He's been my favorite player in the NCAA tournament. Like, that'd be the
We'll
direction
talk
I want to go.
him more in a little bit when I go.
Yeah, but like, would you parlay that with, with whatever side that you're picking in this one? Just assuming that any version you can see of your specific team winning, this specific guy is going to have to go off.
It is tough because you hear all the time about Florida's depth. Even Auburn has good depth as well. So it is hard. There are all these different ways that you can see it. If you have such a great feeling about a guy, I don't hate that at all, because then, I mean, favorites have been destroying this tournament, just straight up. Not really against the spread, though. Like, they went roughly 500 off the top of my head in Elite 8, Sweet 16. But the favorites won every single game. So it's not a bad bet to just bet the favorite to win. Now it's minus 155 right now. I don't love that. That's a little too much juice for me. So if you have a guy that you like, if you think Walter Clayton is going to he's going to take over this game like he has in other games this tournament, absolutely parlay his points. And even you can move the line a little bit on DraftKings now. Like, they have 22 plus points, 20 plus points. So you can go and do like 20 plus points at minus 155 with the money line. And that's a plus 134 parlay. Now you have plus money for both of those guys. So definitely not a bad bet. If you like a player and just go Florida money line, keep betting these favorites.
Could you do Tahad Pettiford if he misses his first 2 shots and then live bet whatever his props are? Because I would just, once he gets one down, he's one of those guys where all of a sudden you're just like, every single time he thinks it's going in, and I would want to get my money in before he gets that first one to go down, because, man, it just feels like it goes all downhill for him.
That's the shooter's mentality, though, right? They always say that shooters don't go 0 for 4 because they don't stop shooting after missing those first 4.
Yeah.
Rather go over 30.
Yep.
Oh, okay. I have been having a very tough time. Even through this video, I've been back and forth in my head. I know the smart thing to do for me, which I'm leaning, but then it's pretty much a gut versus like the stats I'm looking at. That's the bettor's dilemma right now. And it would be the smarter thing for me to go Auburn, whether it's plus the points, take a money line, because I do have a future on Florida. So kind of a hedge spot there. I have Florida winning my bracket as well. So all like the smart gambling, I do like them in this matchup. It's going to be a very good game. But then it just scares me if all of a sudden it's 6:30 Eastern time, we're a few minutes into the game, and Janai Broom is just struggling. He's not himself. They are deep, like they can still win the game, but that is such a massive part of this. And Florida is they're the 5th best against the spread team in the country, 27-11, 71.1%. They only covered once in the tournament so far, which isn't ideal.
Law of averages.
But they find these ways to win. And I just think it's going to come down to the rebounding, the second chance points, and I think Florida has that edge. And it's just tough. Do I just keep going down this road? Do I just go Florida? I have them to win my bracket, have them to win it all from before the tournament. Do I just bet them now? I think the answer is yes. I'm going to go with Florida. It's going to come back to like haunt me, but I'm locking it in here live. We're going Florida minus 2.5. And then my favorite player prop of the game, I'll give you one more. I talked about Walter Clayton. I do like that. I don't hate the 20 plus points or 22 plus points, wherever his line will be at. But I'm going to look for Thomas Houck, who we've talked about a little bit already. And I like him, a plus money prop, 20 plus points and rebounds combined. He has hit this number in his last 2 games. And when they played earlier in the regular season, he had 25 combined, 16 points, 9 boards. I really like this at plus money, just for a lot of the reasons why I decided to pick Florida. I think he's going to be a monster on the glass. And both of these teams we haven't really talked about yet, they're both very good at defending the 3. They both like to shoot the 3, but they're both very good at defending the 3. So I think whoever is stronger on the interior is going to win this game. And I think Thomas Houck gives them a great chance. He's had a good tournament.
One of the things, too, that's interesting about his game is that he's going to bring the bigs out to the perimeter, and you just can't give him that airspace. And so, like how that impacts switches and stuff like that with him just changes how a defense wants to play. And I don't know that Auburn, like some people are going to say, like maybe this is a bad take because they face Kalkbrenner obviously in that Creighton matchup, but they haven't really faced a lot of bigs that are truly going to play like 25 feet the way. And I guess Wolf falls into this, the Michigan big who thinks he's a guard. But there are so few guys that do all the things that Hauk does that I like that play because he's going to impact the game, right? Like he's too valuable, and his ability to see the floor is too next level for me to just think that he's going to turtle on that stage when we've seen so many big moments from him. And they play him down the stretch too. He's an 80% free throw shooter. Like he's one of those guys that's going to run to the inbounds passer. So even if you're hanging on by a thread at the very end of it, you're like, maybe he's going to get 5 cheap free throws for me or something like that, because he's one of those guys that he's going to get open against his man and he's going to be able to get some of those cheap points late. So I like that play a lot.
And that's huge. If you're a big man staying in the game, you don't have to worry about them going small, taking them out of the game. That is a huge aspect as well.
You know who he reminds me a little of? He's a couple of inches taller, but he kind of reminds me of Con Knipple. Because, Con, when he got there, he was a jump shooter. Everybody thought, but he gets to the basket, he posts guys up, he rebounds, he does a lot of things. He kind of reminds me of that same kind of player.
He's been beating the odds since he was a 3-star recruit in Pennsylvania. Yeah, right. That's what he does. Thomas Hauk beats the odds.
All right. Well, I cannot wait for this game on Saturday. Connor, Brett, thank you so much for coming on, joining me, talking some ball. I'm on Florida. Brett's on Florida. Connor's on Auburn. It's going to be a great game.
Should be.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, Jack.
Yep.